So, good morning, everyone. So, quick introduction from me, first of all. So, I work for Jisc in the innovation area, and I co-lead a project called National Centre for AI in Tertiary Education, short, snappy name. And we started this as a project a couple of years ago to help accelerate the adoption of AI across our sectors. So there was a feeling that perhaps we weren't taking advantage of it compared to other sectors, other parts of the world. And we're doing that through practical things like pilots, as well as information, events and that kind of thing. So that's kind of where we fit in. I'm just going to start off with a bit of context. And this is quite interesting. This is based on a presentation I first did in November that feels like 100 years ago now in terms of AI and how much it's changed since there. So we'll have a look at the tools in this space. I'm going to spend a little time delving into how ChatGPT itself works, in particular how it's trained. We'll reflect on what we've seen, and then we'll look forward what next, which that should give a nice segue into the rest of the day. So I'm guessing a lot of you know all this, but I'll start at the beginning anyway. So technical context, as we said, there have been massive advances in the ability of AI to generate content, and it's text, images, computer code, all sorts of things. And it's been enabled by the technologies that we've already heard about this morning. So ChatGPT, DALL-E, Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, Codex, Bard, Bing Chat, Claude, the list keeps growing. As it's growing, we realize these tools have got the potential to disrupt education, both positive and negative ways. So as we heard at the beginning, questions quite normally posed, what does it mean if AI tools can write essays, solve maths problems, automatically do coding tasks? Are we seeing this as a tool to enable students to cheat, or can we harness them? Now, the headlines, as we know, very much went down the line of students are going to cheat. And this is one of the few times that things that we're all involved in actually kind of hits the national press and gets a lot of discussion about. But we had things like students are going to cheat, homework's going to be redundant, look at this exam it can pass, how are we all going to redo our assessment? And really, there's more to the story, isn't there, than that? I'll start off just by reflecting back a couple of years, actually, because it's easy to think this story started in November with ChatGPT. But really, the hype around this started a couple of years ago when GPT-3 was first released, and we started to see the first text generation tools appear. And it happened a little bit under the radar. But what was happening was that actually a whole bunch of apps were being marketed directly at students and have been for a couple of years. So here's an example from last summer. This screenshot is 10 apps that write your essays for them and boost your grade. So, you know, maybe there's something in those headlines. And it wasn't just Jasper, it was lots and lots of them. And if you looked at the sales pitch on them, they said things like, I've turned in so many assignments using Moonbeam, it gets me an A with no plagiarism, does such a great job. Okay, so this was last summer. So even then, this kind of narrative was around. I'm sure we've all seen it in action. What I thought I'd quickly do now, though, is just kind of confirm that, but show how it's grown even in the last few weeks. So let's just swap up. We'll have a 500-word essay. We'll get turbo mode ChatGPT to do it. What else have we got here? The Zoom bar's in the way for me. Let's get Bard to do it, just released yesterday for us. We'll get Poe to have a go. Poe is another one. So it's not just one application now. We have got loads. And yeah, each of them is having a good crack at writing my essay for me. I'm now spoilt for choice. Apart from Bard, has just refused to do it. Excellent. Bard was doing a great job at writing my essay earlier today. So we've all seen it. We know it works, and it looks like it can write our essay for us. but we know it's beyond that. So let's just pick one. It's not just essays. We can do things like feed it in multiple choice questions. And let's have a look at, oh, sorry, wrong one. Let's just stop it. Let's stop that. Try again. I can feed in multiple choice questions and it does just as good a job at those. Okay, so we know that it looks like it really can do our essays for us, do a great job, do our homework. It's a good idea really though to step back and understand what's really happening with these tools. And I'm now going to focus specifically on ChatGPT, just because there's more info about that and there is long history. So let's just pick up 6 bullet points on it. So GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer, which we probably know. It was created by a company called OpenAI. And it's worth reflecting on this, that OpenAI started as a not-for-profit. It is now very much a for-profit company. So they're not doing it out of the goodness of their hearts, and other competitors exist, as we've seen. It's based on a machine learning approach called transformers that was first proposed by Google, interestingly enough, in 2017. So in terms of technology, that's not very far away. So we've had a really short time from a technique first being proposed to it working really, really well. Then there's 3 things that I'm going to just delve into in a little bit more detail. So it's trained on large chunks of the internet plus some books. Humans then get involved to help turn it into a useful chatbot. And the way it works is it predicts the next word given a sequence of words, which is sort of counterintuitive. Technically, it's a token, not a word, and we'll have a look at that in action. Apart from I forgot to pre-log into the thing I need to, so you have to bear with me there for a moment. So let's delve into the training data to start with, because this is quite interesting and it helps us understand perhaps why we get some of the output we do. So the first thing it's trained on is something called Common Crawl. So this is a basically a dump of the entire open internet that has been made available for researchers to do whatever they want with. Okay, so this already exists. You can go in, look at it, explore it, download it yourself if you want, but it's basically everything there that it can find on the internet. The problem with that, obviously, is that it contains all sorts of things, including an awful lot of rubbish, unpleasant material, that kind of thing. So OpenAI decided to try and figure out how to get the best stuff. And they took quite a curious approach to this. They created something called web text by crawling on all the documents that Reddit users liked. So Reddit users gave at least 3 commas. So if you think about it for a second, Reddit users, and you can go online and check the demographic, are largely American young male. So we've got an interesting kind of bias in the selection of the material here. And you can see that in the cultural bias you get from it. They then use that to create a model to predict the good stuff at the common crawl text. Okay, so quite an interesting starting point to what we see today. They then added in a bunch of other stuff. So they added in Wikipedia, a whole bunch of open books, and those it's actually quite hard to get details on. But if you look at the weighting, it's largely stuff from the internet. So what that gave us at this point was a model that was really good at writing text. So this is where we were last summer, say, with the Jasper that I showed you. But highly prone to misinformation, so much more so than ChatGPT, and very prone to, I'm going to say unwanted responses, but it would happily give you racist, sexist, whatever, illegal responses. And we've seen this with previous chatbots. So the challenge then was, how do we turn the raw text generator into, I'm going to say, a good chatbot? And this is where humans got involved in the training. So you may have heard stories about the toxic filter and the workers in Kenya getting involved in it. If you have, that is something separate to this. Okay, so this is a separate stage. And what happened is that OpenAI recruited a bunch of people to essentially train it how to be a good chatbot. So two-stage process. First of all, they came up with prompts and then got the human to actually write the answer. Yeah, so keep doing that, show the answer back, and then train the model on what a good answer looks like. So they're not trying to gather all the knowledge. That all came from the internet. What they're trying to do is gather what a helpful response looks like, and also how you'd react to unpleasant, unwanted stuff. If you think about that, that means that OpenAI are introducing their own bias about what they think is good into the process. And that partly explains why it behaves in such a kind of pleasant but bland way. The labelers then come into a second stage of the training. So that data is used to train it. The labelers come in and they then worked with ChatGPT. It gave a response. They ranked them, the ones that they liked, and it used that to train it. It's called feedback, to again refine and give it helpful answers. Now, this is obviously worked remarkably well in that you have to try really, really hard to get unwanted, illegal responses from ChatGPT. But it's also very much constrained what it can do in terms of political views, cultural bias, and that kind of thing. Okay, so that's its training data. And bear with me 2 ticks. This is the bit that I forgot to log into something before. So I'm just going to quickly do that. Right, so it works by predicting the next word, or technically token, in a sequence of words. And I think this is kind of really counterintuitive. And to start with, people were really having trouble grasping this. It looks like what's happening is you're typing in a question, it's going on searching on its training data to find the answer, and then coming back with a response. But that's actually not what's happening at all. And you can see that by going into the playground behind it. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to switch down here and ask it to show the probabilities. And I'm just going to give it a simple prompt. So I'm just going to ask it to write a sentence about Jisc. Okay, so what it's doing here is we can actually go in and explore the probability of each word. So it's got that, it's working out how to continue it. So the first one, yeah, it was 100% almost probability it was going to start with Jisc. And it's just working out a probability, and you can see the other words that it could have chosen for each word in succession. And to create this human-like response, make it variable, it doesn't always pick the most probable word. So we've got an example here. The most likely thing would have been to say Jisc is a UK, but to give a bit of human variance, it's picked one of the less likely words, not. Yeah. So really, the fact that it can actually generate the quality of responses is really, really quite impressive, given that it really is just a sequence of word predictions. That also, though, explains why it is so prone to misinformation. You can see here that if I picked one of the less likely words, it might well have gone off in a completely different direction. If you've never explored this before, it's worth having a go. And one way that I recommend doing it is to have a look at a response from about something that you know an awful lot about. And I'm not going to do this one live just because I'll have to read through what it actually comes up with. But a fun way to do it is to ask it about yourself, give it a bit of context, get it to write a bio for you, and see what it comes up with, because you know whether it's true. So this is one from me earlier. It's what it's done. It's got my job title wrong. It's promoted me to in Jisc. It's lied about which university I went to. It's lied about places I've worked. It's just come up with a whole bunch of things that are incorrect. This is because there's not an awful lot of information about me on the internet. And what it's done is just predicted a word sequence about somebody like me. So when you experiment with this, if you pick a well-known topic, you'll find that it will almost certainly come up with truthful, accurate stuff. But the more obscure the question, the more likely it is to generate facts that are wrong. And that's quite interesting. We've never really had to deal with technology like that before. So it's not stringing together words and phrases. In fact, the way that it's trained, the actual original phrases don't actually go into the model. It basically breaks down the words and links together the concept between them. So it can't even replicate entire sentences. It's not stringing together and rephrasing. It's predicting words. No concept of truth whatsoever. So if we think the journey, and most of us have perhaps gone through this journey, starting with, wow, it can write essays, what should we do? We give it a try. It really can. Then we start to understand its weaknesses. We see, it's not that simple. It lies. Now, it's not really lying. That's quite an emotive term, but it comes up with false information. So we go to a trough. It's all useless hype. Should we ignore it? And clearly the answer to that is no. Yeah, so it's got strengths, it's got weaknesses, it's got biases, but actually it could do some quite fantastic things. So let's step back a bit and go back to where we've been over the last couple of years again. So I started off by showing how for the last couple of years, a whole bunch of tools have been targeted at students, saying, hey, we can help you cheat. That's not really what they've been doing. These tools have been targeted at professional writers to help them write. So help them write product descriptions, blogs, copyright, all of that kind of thing. So what's happened is that this technology has, perhaps somewhat under the radar, become a fairly mainstream tool, changing how certain industries work. And that's what's happening now, obviously, with ChatGPT, discussions about how it is starting to affect all sorts of industries. So it's become not something to cheat, but something we can take advantage of to do interesting stuff. Keeping up with the announcements on that is really, really hard. So I suspect a lot of you have seen the announcements last week from Microsoft and Google. So Microsoft have got a lovely video showing Copilot, how it's going to be built into Office throughout. So we'll be able to do things like chat with it, get it to write outlines, but also do things like manipulate Excel spreadsheets, connect to Salesforce, do all sorts of interesting stuff. Google, similar. So it's going to be part of our everyday tool, how we write, how we work, and not something separate as we see it today as ChatGPT, somewhere we go to use it separately. This is just part of a continual trend of intelligence. So in 2009, not that long ago, there were articles saying that spell checkers were using us, were going to ruin us. Going back further, there was discussion actually the written word was going to ruin our thought. So we've just seen continual intelligence in our writing tools. When I first used this slide, I had 20x, didn't know what year it was going to be in GPTX. It's come faster than I thought actually into Word. And let's not lose sight that grammar checkers actually have got a huge amount of AI in them. So we shifted from it being something that is just about cheating to a positive. We can see it's being used as a tool already in industry and has been for a year or a couple of years. OpenAI itself give a whole bunch of use cases in their educator's guide. So the kind of thing that we've already talked about this morning or heard about. So drafting lesson plans, helping quiz designs, customized materials. So it's great at taking something complex and simplifying the language for different learning, reading levels, that sort of thing. One of my favorite things is using it to get feedback on your own writing. So just get some text, paste it in and say, proofread this or give me some feedback on it. Does a really good job. Upskilling in all sorts of activities like writing code, you can get it to explain code and that works really well. So it's like a companion. And we've seen so many tools be launched, particularly since GPT-4's announcement. I think they're holding back about the technology just being integrated in all sorts of things. Couple of big ones back there, Duolingo and Khan Academy. So obviously education doesn't just happen in our establishments. These are pretty interesting. I've been trying to learn Welsh in Duolingo and looking forward to actually be able to chat to it in Welsh and see how I get on. We've seen emerging tools aimed at teachers. So Teachermatic's one that we really like the look of. Prompting itself can be complex. You've got a session on it today. These tools take away the need to learn how to prompt by just asking a bunch of questions and generating lesson plans and all of that kind of thing. So all sorts of things are coming. It's easy, I think, to assume that everyone out there is using this all the time and we don't need to start at the basics. I think that's not true. When we talk to people, lots of people haven't used ChatGPT yet. Lots of people just need help getting going. We've created a few blog posts on that. And I just want to end by just some of the kind of things that you probably all know, but let's just pick some of the things out that you can do just to end on. So let's pop into there. So when people first start using it, they perhaps tend to use it in quite a naive way. So say people wanted to create a multiple choice quiz or a lesson plan, they might ask quite a basic question. I'm going to get it to do a 3-week lesson plan, but you can give quite sophisticated prompts. So what I've done, I've taken the learning aims for a course. I've put all of those into it first. So it's not just giving me a lesson plan based on a topic. It's taken my learning aims, reflected back and coming up with a nice starter plan around that. We can do a similar thing if we want to generate things like quizzes. So again, we don't just have to ask a basic question of generate me a quiz. We can take some of our learning aims and say, generate me a quiz from that. So one of my learning aims was about defining a chatbot and its benefits. So I'm going to just say, create me a quiz based around that topic, and off it goes. So examples you're probably all aware of, but I think we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that perhaps a lot of the people we work with aren't, and starting at the beginning is useful. So that is what I wanted to cover today. If any of you want to follow our work more, those are our details. I'm going to stop screen sharing, and I think we've got a little bit of time if we want to have any questions or discussion.
Thanks for that, Michael. Yes, certainly, if you have any questions, you can just pop it into the chat, which I'll try to pick up, or one of my colleagues will. And in the room, if you have anything for Michael. So one of the things I just noticed recently, and I installed last night, was there was a prediction as to how much all of this technology costs. Like, I think they estimate $43 million to make ChatGPT, train it.
Yeah.
And then recently, it was at Stanford, had used the data set that Meta had made free, and they trained it using GPT-3, using the Llama 7B model and Alpaca, which is their training set. And they've released it for free online. You can download it. It's running on my very beat up laptop without an internet connection just now. It's not as good as GPT-4, but it's not bad. It's like, and it's scary. Like the fact that I can download it, stick it on my 6-year-old laptop and get it to work. And I've seen stuff about linking GPT, which is not great with maths, to Wolfram Alpha to produce like Escher sets. Where is this all going, Michael? What's coming up? What should we be looking for?
So I think you've hit the nail on the head, really. So the first thing is that we are seeing this trickle down. And I've actually seen people get a GPT-like thing running on their phone, even as in their phone hardware, not on the web interface. So if we look at where the flaws are at the moment, we have this issue with large language models always going to be prone to misinformation. Okay, so fundamentally how they work, they are always going to do that. And there are two schools of thought on this, whether they're actually going to hit a brick wall and we're not going to solve it, or whether by keep training them and putting more data, we will. I think that we'll see the route that you mentioned, in that to solve this, we will see systems chained together. So we'll see generative AI connected to things like Wolfram Alpha. I've seen one connected to a reference generator, for example. So you move on, separate thing generates references. We could be a situation where a second process checks for truth in it. We're seeing people chain together tools where the text generates a prompt, which is fed into a video to create a video on it. So we're just seeing more and more kind of chaining together to create interesting things. The direction it's going, I think, really, though, is going to be based on how it's used by employers in the end, or how it's going to be used in our workplace. I think we need to keep an eye on that. So we did a bit of work, for example, looking at how it's used in the legal profession, creative professions, and things like that. Because in a way, those areas can adapt quicker than us. You don't have to modify the curriculum to adopt it. So let's look outwards as well, would be kind of my message there, to see where it's going.
Okay, I think we have time for a question from the room.
I just wonder, I'm a great believer in that we'll need to evolve as opposed to, but there is a lot of fear out there, especially about students, as you've already highlighted. How do we get round lecturers saying, look, this is something that we need to, well, we're not going to have any choice. It's going to be used. We're not going to be able to ban it or anything. So how would you persuade them or encourage them to use ChatGPT, but also how to evolve, how to change the way that they teach?
So Michael, just in case the mic didn't pick it up, so this is a question that we'll be looking at with Louise, who's speaking next. But it's essentially considering AI as an opportunity or a threat, and it is perceived by a threat by many within the educational community at the moment. How do you change that stance? How do you get people to see the opportunity rather than the threat presented by ChatGPT?
Yeah, so the angle we've been taking is try and reassure people a little bit, actually, because actually this is really new, and what we're seeing is kind of panic that people aren't keeping up, that everyone else is using it and they shouldn't be, and that's not really where we are at the moment. Yeah, so let's not lose sight of the fact that GPT itself is just a preview release, as are a lot of the others. Okay. So if we're saying to people, look, it's fine to just be at the stage of thinking about it at the moment, learn about it, understand, but you need to be doing that because at the point it is integrated into all of our tools, you are going to have to understand it. But just start with some basic stuff. So start with your assignments, understand how it can answer those. Yeah, get a feel for it, come in at that angle, think about some tasks that you regularly do. Can it help with those? But just don't take the pressure off yourself at the moment. And I think that we generally find that's kind of helping people. They're thinking, okay, it's fine.
Okay, excellent. So more opportunity than threat is what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah. But take the pressure off. I think that is really important.
Thank you so much, Michael. I really appreciate your input.